Logan, breakfast is ready. I called out to my husband, who was reading the newspaper in the living room as I ladled the soup into bowls. Thank you, Alice. Today, Janice and her family are coming over for a visit after a long time, aren't they? Logan replied, setting aside the paper. Yes, it's been a month since we last saw them. I'm looking forward to seeing how much little Caleb has grown, I said with a smile, picturing our adorable grandson. I'm Alice, a 51-year-old housewife. Logan and I have been married for 29 years, and now we spend our days in peaceful contentment. Our only daughter, Janice, and her family often visit us, adding color to our lives. As I watched Logan's back as he headed to the dining table, I suddenly remembered our daughter and her husband. Janice got married 4 years ago when she was 23. Her husband, Brian, was her classmate and an elite businessman, par excellence. Everyone envied her for making such a great catch. On their wedding day, Janice looked truly happy in her pure white dress, and I remember feeling overwhelmed with emotion. Mom, let's always stay close, she had said, her eyes sparkling with joy. Of course, dear, your happiness is my happiness, I replied, hugging her tight. It's been 4 years since that day. When Caleb was born, I was overjoyed to see my first grandchild's face. Having a grandchild makes us realize we're getting old, doesn't it? I mused to myself. Hey, I still feel young at heart, Logan joked, winking at me. Oh, only at heart, I see, I teased, laughing at Logan's jokes. We looked forward to watching our grandson grow up. I think I'll make Caleb's favorite dishes today. He loves hamburger steak, doesn't he? I said, already planning the menu. That's right, I'm looking forward to it, Logan agreed, his mouth watering at the thought. As we exchanged pleasant conversation, I began preparing for dinner. As the night grew late, the usual tranquility was shattered by the shrill ring of the telephone. Who could be calling at this hour? I wondered, a knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. As I picked up the receiver, I was met with Caleb's panicked sobs on the other end. Grandma! Mommy! Mommy! He cried, his voice thick with tears. Caleb, what's wrong? I asked desperately, trying to hold back my own rising panic. The words Caleb uttered next were incredibly shocking. Mommy suddenly collapsed and she's foaming at the mouth. She's not moving. His words made my blood run cold. What on earth had happened to my daughter, Janice? I'm coming right now. Did you call an ambulance? I asked, my voice trembling. Yeah, but it's not here yet. Please hurry, Grandma, Caleb pleaded. I understand, Caleb. Wait right there, okay? As soon as I hung up, I explained the situation to Logan, my voice shaking. Janice collapsed? His face turned pale, mirroring the fear that gripped my heart. We immediately rushed out of the house and hurried to our daughter's home. The scene we witnessed upon arrival was like a nightmare. The front door was wide open, and as we entered, we saw the living room floor stained crimson. There lay our daughter, covered in blood, her eyes closed. Janice, stay with me, I cried, running to her side as I cradled her body. Blood trickled from Janice's mouth and her breathing seemed weak. Mommy? I heard a faint voice and turned to see Caleb, his face tear-stained, standing by the doorway. Caleb, what happened to Mommy? I asked, my voice strained with worry. I don't know. Mommy suddenly started coughing and throwing up blood, and then she collapsed. That's when I called you, Grandma, Caleb explained, sounding far too calm for a 4-year-old, but his eyes were filled with fear. Just then, we heard the sound of sirens approaching, signaling the arrival of the ambulance. Logan, I'm going with Janice. Please take care of Caleb, I said resolutely, trusting our grandson to my husband as I stayed by our unconscious daughter's side. Janice, don't give up. I'll make sure you're saved, I whispered, a silent prayer in my heart as I climbed into the ambulance. The journey to the hospital felt excruciatingly long, as if it were a path leading straight to hell. As I waited in the hospital's waiting room, receiving updates on Janice's condition from the paramedics, my phone rang. It was Logan. I talked to Caleb. He has a message from Janice, he said, his voice low and serious. His words sent a chill down my spine. A message? What could it be? She said to look behind the dining room clock, Logan replied, confusion lacing his tone. Behind the clock? What could be there? Pondering the meaning of Janice's message, I continued to pray for my daughter's safety as the ambulance sirens faded into the distance. I sat in the waiting room chair, filled with anxiety. I couldn't stop worrying about Janice's condition. Why did this happen? Remembering my daughter's face, smiling and full of life just a few days ago, my heart ached. Amid my thoughts, Logan called again. "Alice," he began, his voice heavy. "I heard more from Caleb. Brian has been physically abusing Janice." I was at a loss for words upon hearing this shocking revelation. Brian, who seemed so kind, had been violent towards our daughter. I couldn't believe it. According to Caleb, Janice was desperate to protect him, but it must have become too much for her to bear, and she wanted to let us know, Logan explained, his voice filled with anger and sadness. As I listened to my husband, I imagined the suffering Janice had endured. She must have borne it alone, hiding it from those around her. "I couldn't protect my daughter," I said, feeling a surge of regret. I felt miserable for not recognizing my son-in-law's true nature. Just then, the waiting room door opened, and a doctor appeared. "You're Janice's family, correct? I have an update on her condition." I listened intently to the doctor, my nerves on edge. Janice was brought in unconscious. "We believe the cause is shock due to ingesting some kind of poison," the doctor explained, his face grim. "Poison?" The doctor's words sent a chill down my spine. "We're currently providing emergency treatment. I believe there's no immediate danger to the patient's life, but she will need to be monitored in the ICU for some time," he said. I breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing that Janice's life was not in immediate danger. After seeing the doctor, I called Logan and relayed the information. "Still, I can't believe Brian would poison her," I said, doubt creeping into my voice. "Yeah, me neither. But if there's evidence, it must be behind the clock, as the message said," Logan replied, his voice determined. As I listened to my husband, I pictured the dining room clock. We needed to quickly confirm the meaning behind that message. "Logan, go back to Janice's house right away. I'll return as soon as I can," I said, feeling a renewed sense of urgency. "Got it. Be careful," he replied. After hanging up, I headed to Janice's hospital room. Gazing at my daughter lying in the bed, I made a vow. "Janice, I'll uncover the truth. I'll clear away your regrets." Holding my daughter's hand tightly, I hurried back to my husband. What truth lay hidden behind the clock? Despite my growing sense of dread, I renewed my determination to pursue the truth. Leaving the hospital room, I returned home by taxi and then headed to Janice and Brian's house once more. As the night breeze brushed against my skin, my heart was filled with complex emotions. Janice, Caleb, Brian. What on earth happened? Logan, looking utterly exhausted, greeted me at the front door. "Alice, you're late. What did the doctor say?" "Her life isn't in danger, but she'll be in the ICU for a while," I replied, watching as my husband's expression turned to one of relief. I found myself continuing, "I can't believe Brian would do this. But if what Caleb said is true..." "Yeah, I know. But there's something we need to check behind the clock," Logan said, his voice firm. With those words, he led me to the dining room. There, on the table, sat the familiar wall clock. As Logan picked up the clock and turned it over, he said, "I confirmed with Caleb. Janice meant this clock. This is it." I gasped. A small piece of paper was stuck to the back of the clock, some kind of memo. With trembling hands, I peeled off the paper and unfolded it. Written there was a cryptic string of characters. No 9T1030. It looks like a code. What could this mean? I wondered aloud, my brow furrowing. I'm not sure, but Janice wanted to leave this for us. It must have an important meaning, Logan said with a nod, his eyes studying the note. Just then, we heard a noise from the entryway. "Grandpa! Grandma!" It was Caleb's small voice. "Caleb, what's the matter? It's the middle of the night," I said, surprised to see him. Caleb appeared in the living room, his eyes red from crying. "Is Mommy okay? What did they say at the hospital?" he asked anxiously, his voice small and trembling. I smiled gently at Caleb. "Mommy's going to be fine. She'll get better, so don't worry." "Thank goodness. I'm sorry I couldn't protect Mommy," Caleb choked out, tears welling up in his eyes again. I hugged him close. "It's not your fault, Caleb. You did your best. But from now on, let Grandma and Grandpa handle it. Protecting Mommy is a job for us adults, okay?" "I understand. Caleb whispered, burying his face against me, his small body trembling. He must have experienced terrible fear. Logan patted Caleb's head and spoke kindly. You did well telling us, Caleb. Thanks to you, we might be able to save Mommy. Really? Caleb looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Yes, I promise. So go to sleep now. Grandpa will make sure you can see Mommy tomorrow, okay? Okay, thank you, Grandpa, Caleb said, a small smile gracing his lips. After putting Caleb to bed, Logan and I returned to the dining room, the note weighing heavily on our minds. Let's take another look at the contents of the memo, Logan said, picking it up. N9T1030. Could no 92 be some kind of number? 9th floor? Come to think of it, Janice and Brian's apartment is on the 9th floor, I recalled, a possible connection forming in my mind. And T could be time capsule, maybe? In that case, 1030 would be... I nodded at Logan's words. The time. There must be a time capsule hidden in the 9th floor apartment at 10:30. That's it. Let's go look for it. We have to uncover the truth ourselves, I declared, determination hardening my voice. I took my husband's hand as we headed to the 9th floor apartment. Opening the door, it looked like Janice and Brian's usual room. 10:30. Where might be related to that time? I muttered, glancing around the familiar space. How about the alarm clock back in the bedroom? Logan suggested, walking towards their bedroom. He picked up the digital clock from the bedside table. This is it, just like the memo. Let's open the back cover. Logan flipped the clock over. Found it! Inside the back cover, an SD card was hidden. This must be what Janice wanted to leave for us, Logan said excitedly, his voice laced with anticipation. I nodded in agreement. Let's check the contents right away. Holding our breath, we inserted the SD card into the computer. A folder opened, revealing several video files. This is... My voice trembled, a wave of nausea washing over me. The screen showed countless acts of violence by Brian. Janice, with a terrified expression, is hit and kicked by Brian, desperately trying to protect Caleb. How awful! How could he? I was at a loss for words, tears streaming down my face as I watched the horrifying footage. Logan was shaking with anger beside me. Unforgivable! Unforgivable! He growled through gritted teeth. Just then, the bedroom door burst open. What are you doing? Brian appeared, shouting. How could you? I said coldly, unable to hide my agitation and disgust. What are you talking about? Enough with the lies, it's all recorded on this SD card. At my words, the color drained from Brian's face. That's impossible. Admit it, you tried to kill Janice with poison, didn't you? No, I didn't. Brian fled the room in a panic, his facade crumbling. Logan! I shouted, as my husband chased after him. I immediately called the police, on the verge of collapse. The case was about to take a major turn. The time had come to bring the truth to light in the face of justice. Janice, just hold on a little longer. I swear I'll clear away your regrets, I whispered, gripping the SD card like a prayer, steeling my resolve. I steeled my resolve the morning after the commotion. I headed to the hospital, terribly worried about Janice's condition. I spoke with the doctor in charge outside the ICU. Last night's tests detected poison in Janice's blood. Fortunately, the amount was small, so her life is not in danger, the doctor said, relieved. I listened as he continued. However, the effects of the poison may keep her unconscious for some time. It could take a while for her to recover. I see, but it's a blessing in disguise that her life was spared. Yes, I believe your daughter is a strong person. She'll surely get better. I nodded at the doctor's words. If anyone knew Janice's strength, it was me. Entering the ICU, I saw my daughter lying in bed, her face pale, as if asleep. Janice. I gently took her hand and spoke to her. It's all right now. The police will thoroughly investigate Brian. Last night, Logan explained the situation to the police and submitted the SD card after apprehending Brian. Now it was only a matter of time before his crimes came to light. Caleb has been wanting to see you. Get well soon so you can show him your smile. Touching my daughter's cheek, I closed my eyes in prayer. After that, the case progressed rapidly. Under questioning, Brian confessed to everything, the violence against Janice and the attempted poisoning. It had all been his doing. Brian. Why would he do such a thing? We could only stare in blank shock. How could the man we thought loved our daughter be capable of such cruelty? It seems Janice wouldn't bend to Brian's will. He couldn't stand not having her under his control, Logan said. Hearing his words, my anger toward Brian intensified. Unforgivable, trying to destroy Janice's life for his convenience. Brian probably intended to kill both Janice and Caleb to bury it all. I gasped at Logan's speculation. Even Caleb, I can't believe it. Caleb is his child. Brian is the kind of man who would kill even his child for his desires. It's a horrifying reality. Logan embraced my shoulders as he spoke. Alice, you were so strong. You persevered. No, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't protect Janice. I fought desperately to hold back my tears. No, without you, the truth would have been buried in darkness. You saved both Janice and Caleb. I nodded slightly at Logan's words. Thank you, Logan. I'm so glad I had you with me. Held in my husband's warm arms, I finally released the tears I'd been holding deep inside. A few weeks after the incident, Janice regained consciousness. Rushing to the ICU, I embraced my daughter, still pale. Janice! Thank goodness, I'm so relieved. Mom, I'm sorry for worrying you. Janice apologized weakly. I shook my head, tears in my eyes. You have nothing to apologize for. I'm sorry I didn't notice. We held each other, rejoicing in our long-awaited reunion. Caleb, where's Caleb? Janice asked anxiously. Caleb is fine. He's waiting for you with your dad. I called Logan and Caleb into the room. Mommy! Caleb ran to Janice's side and leaped onto the bed. Caleb, I'm sorry. You must have been so lonely without Mommy. Janice held Caleb close, tears streaming down her face. I was lonely, but I'm so happy you're back, Mommy. Caleb buried his face in Janice's chest, crying. Logan and I watched over their reunion, sighing with relief in our hearts. It's finally over. Yes, it's a new beginning. Janice and Caleb can be happy from now on. I nodded firmly at Logan's words. Yes, that's right. We'll protect their happiness. Overcoming past wounds so Janice and Caleb could live with smiles again. Logan and I vowed this to each other. Brian's trial was the last big hurdle for our family. Overwhelmed by the evidence and testimony, Brian ultimately had no choice but to admit to all his crimes. The sentence, 15 years in prison. Brian finally seemed to realize the gravity of what he had done. I am truly, deeply sorry. In his final statement, Brian bowed his head to our family. Brian, I can never forgive you, but I won't hold a grudge, I declared resolutely. I'm tired of being bound by anger toward you. We're cutting ties with you. Brian left the courtroom, his head hung low. 3 years have passed since then. Janice and Caleb are living with Logan and me. Janice has begun studying to become a nurse, and Caleb is in elementary school. They are gradually healing from their past wounds and starting new lives. Mom, I worked hard at my practicum today, Janice said. That's great, dear. Caleb, what happened at school? At the dinner table, Janice and Caleb chatted happily. Watching this heartwarming scene, I took Logan's hand. Logan, we've finally grasped happiness. Yes, we have. Let's protect this happiness together. Our family, having regained our peaceful daily life and overcoming past sorrows, could finally truly become a family. Watching Janice and Caleb's smiles, I felt happiness from the bottom of my heart. No matter what hardships we faced, we could overcome them together as a family. Believing that I held hands with my husband, daughter, and grandson, and smiled. 10 years have gone by. Janice is working as a nurse and Caleb is in high school. Logan and I are enjoying a tranquil retirement. One day, Janice approached me with a serious expression. Mom, I got a letter from Brian. What? I gasped at the unexpected words. It's a letter he sent from prison. He says he wants to see me. I couldn't hide my bewilderment at Janice's words. You're planning to meet him? Yeah, there's something I need to say to Brian, so I've decided to see him. Seeing the determination on Janice's face, I nodded silently. I understand, but be careful. A few days later, Janice went to the visitation. That night, I greeted her when she returned home. How did it go? Janice answered with a complex expression. Brian wanted to apologize to me. He said he's gone through a rehabilitation program and faced his crimes. I see, but I can't forgive Brian. But I'm tired of holding a grudge. I couldn't conceal my surprise at Janice's words. So I told Brian that I'm going to live facing forward. There was a dignified light in Janice's eyes. Also, I heard a shocking story from Brian. A shocking story. The reason Brian tried to control us was because he was being controlled himself. I gasped at Janice's words. Brian's father was an incredibly strict man. Brian said he'd been controlled and deprived of freedom since he was little. No way. So by controlling us, Brian was trying to vent his own suppressed feelings. But he regretted it, realizing that was wrong. As I listened to Janice's story, I was filled with complex emotions. Brian's actions were by no means forgivable, but perhaps he too was a victim, controlled by a different aggressor. Mom, I can't forgive Brian, but I might be able to understand him, Janice said quietly. I nodded at her words. I understand how you feel, but Brian's past doesn't justify hurting you. I know, that's why I'm going to live facing forward, facing both Brian and myself. I felt proud of Janice's resolve. My daughter was not only overcoming sorrow, but trying to understand her aggressor as well. That was no easy feat. Janice, you are truly a strong person. I'm so proud of you. I gently embraced my daughter, who smiled through her tears. Brian's confession brought a new perspective to our family. It taught us that there are people in this world carrying hidden sorrows. That's why we must strive to understand and support each other. Janice's choice showed me that. I was deeply grateful for my daughter's strength and kindness, overcoming sorrow and reaching understanding. Perhaps Janice's way of life is the path we should all aspire to. Thinking that, I couldn't help but feel hope for our family's future. After experiencing the full journey of our story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How did the story resonate with you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay blessed. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.